My HOA president, Linda, has always acted like her rule book outranks the U.S. Constitution itself. But this week, she finally crossed into full-blown madness. It all began the moment I installed high-security reinforced doors and pitch-black windows on my house. Linda fired off a panicked letter insisting I was running an illegal operation or a drug den because I refused to let her inspection committee inside to measure my curtains. She had been riding a power high all month, slapping Mrs. Higgins with a $200 fine for having flowers that were the wrong shade of pink, so she felt completely untouchable. I tried to handle it calmly. I sent her a formal email explaining that my residence had a special legal designation and was exempt from HOA interior inspections. Linda didn't care. She replied with a final notice of seizure, announcing that at exactly 12 p.m. on Friday, she would arrive with a locksmith and local police to force entry and audit my home. I called her one last time to warn her. I said, "Linda, listen very carefully. You do not have jurisdiction to enter this property. If you attempt to force your way in, you will be committing a federal crime far above your pay grade." She laughed hysterically and said, "Alex, I'm the president. I have authority over every inch of this neighborhood. Be ready to open up or we'll break the door down." I could hear her typing out the eviction notice while she was still talking to me, smug and dismissive. Then she hung up. She thought she was dealing with a stubborn homeowner. She had no idea she was about to provoke a sovereign nation. I walked to my desk, opened my copy of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, and highlighted Article 31 with a bright yellow marker. I spent the rest of the morning polishing the brass plaque next to my door and putting on my formal suit. I wasn't preparing for a renovation inspection. I was preparing for a diplomatic standoff. Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now and click the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. At exactly noon, a full circus rolled into my driveway. Linda strutted up the walkway like a general leading an invasion, clutching a clipboard and wearing her ridiculous HOA president sash. Behind her stood a nervous locksmith carrying a heavy drill, and behind him were two local police officers. Linda had clearly lied to them. I could hear her saying, "He's a squatter. He's destroying the inside of the house. You need to secure the property." The officers looked unsure, but followed her onto the porch. I saw the locksmith hesitate. He stared at my thick steel reinforced door and quietly muttered to Linda, "Ma'am, this looks like government property. Are you sure about this?" Linda shoved him forward without hesitation. I watched it all through my high-definition security monitors. My heart wasn't racing. I was strangely calm. Linda began pounding on the steel door, screaming, "Open up, Alex. This is your last chance before we drill the lock." When I didn't answer, immediately she snapped and yelled, "Drill it, now!" The locksmith froze, glancing at the officers for approval. That's when I opened the door just a few inches, keeping the heavy security chain locked. I stared at them calmly. "Officer," I said, completely ignoring Linda, "I'm going to ask you to take one step back and read the brass plaque bolted to the wall right next to your head." I then pointed upward to flag pole where the flag of the Republic was slowly waving in the wind, a clear sign they were crossing a border. Linda tried to block their view, screaming, "Don't read it, just arrest him." But the sergeant stepped forward, squinted, and read the engraving aloud. "Honorary Consul of the Republic of XYX, diplomatic mission, inviolable property. The officer froze. The color drained from his face as a reality hit him. They weren't standing on a normal American porch anymore. This was foreign ground. I unlocked the chain and stepped fully into the doorway, blocking their path. I was wearing a t-shirt. I stood there in a tailored navy suit with a flag pin on my lapel. In my left hand was my official black diplomatic passport. In my right hand were credentials issued by the U.S. Department of State. I locked eyes with the sergeant and said, "Officer, my name is Alex. I am the honorary consul. Under the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, Article 31, this property is designated as foreign soil. It is inviolable. You have no authority to enter without a federal warrant signed by the State Department." I watched the understanding wash over his face. He knew violating diplomatic protocol could cost him his badge and pension. Instantly, the sergeant immediately took his hand off his holster and stepped back respectfully. "I apologize, Mr. Consul," he stammered. "We were not informed of the status of this residence. We will leave immediately." He turned to his partner and said, "Let's go. We can't touch this." But Linda couldn't process it. Her mind short-circuited. She screamed, "What are you doing?" He printed that sign off the internet. "Arrest him. He's painting his walls the wrong color." The officer turned to her, his voice sharp and authoritative. "Ma'am, step away from the door. You are interfering with a federal entity. Do not cross that threshold." But Linda was too consumed by rage. She looked at me standing there with full diplomatic immunity and made the worst decision of her life. She shouted, "I am the law," and lunged past the officer, trying to force her way into my hallway. The instant her foot crossed the threshold, she wasn't just trespassing. She was invading foreign territory. I didn't lift a finger. Two large men in black suits, my private diplomatic security detail, burst from the kitchen with military precision. One grabbed her arm, the other locked down her shoulder, shouting, "Threat detected. Get on the ground." They didn't treat her like a neighbor. They treated her like a hostile threat. Linda was slammed to the floor and handcuffed before she even understood what happened. The local police stood, frozen. They couldn't interfere with diplomatic security on consular grounds. 20 minutes later, black SUVs from the Department of State lined the street. The entire neighborhood gathered on the sidewalk, phones held high, live streaming the moment the cul-de-sac dictator finally fell. Federal agents took custody of Linda as she was dragged out screaming, but the HOA rules say I can inspect. The lead agent looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you are being charged with assaulting an internationally protected person and trespassing on a diplomatic mission. You're facing up to 10 years in federal prison." The look on her face when she realized her HOA badge meant nothing to the U.S. government was priceless. The HOA was immediately dissolved by the courts for engaging in illegal international aggression, and my house remains the only place in the neighborhood where I can do whatever I want. Linda is now serving time, and I'm enjoying my tax-free diplomatic status and absolute peace.